Well, hey, let's give it up for David and Victoria Henderson. I would clap, but it would have been very loud. So I didn't. So, hey, we wanted to have some time to honor David and Victoria and for them to share a little bit of their story about being called to church planting and being called to South Jordan, Utah. And really, today is like a testimony of God's faithfulness, right? We're opening a building for the first time in 20 years. This building has been planned or prayed for. And so today is huge. It's a testimony of God's faithfulness, but then also for David and Victoria, a testimony of God's faithfulness. And how he has led them from Penn State to like 9 other cities in America, and then to Bailey, and then now to Salt Lake City. It's kind of true.
Like 4.
Okay, 4 cities, but it's kind of like 9. It's all good, and so
Sometimes.
yeah, I bet so. And so we're really excited, and one of the reasons that we are highlighting this, whether you're watching online or you're here and you don't know, one of our vision statements is to be a church that plants churches. And so when we are accomplishing our vision, we want to put that front and center. And then it's also an opportunity for people to be encouraged in how God is faithful and how he moves in the hearts of men and women. And this is a great story. And so what we're going to do is, we've already done this once, so they know exactly what's happening. You guys don't know exactly what's happening. So I'm going to talk more to you guys than to them. But what we're going to do is we're going to cover really kind of 4 areas. One, kind of their call to church planting and to the South Jordan area. The name behind Nebraska City Church. No,
And it's for knowledge.
and it's not Nebraska City Church, I promise. But the name behind their church plant and the vision and all that. And then kind of a couple of things about what God has done for them personally and in their marriage. And it's very encouraging. And then Dave will have one last final say something to the congregation, which is good. So we're really excited about it. So we're just going to hop in and go for it. And I think you guys will be encouraged by what God has done. And so let's just start with the call to church planting. So like, when did you first know that you were called to church plant? How did you know that was actually a confirmation from the Lord?
I feel like I need to say first that Yuli's advice on that video was very apropos. I hold a title on the staff here. The title is the only staff member to have ever overflowed the baptismal while I was filling it. So that's where that comes from.
Yeah, like
it was like a waterfall. It was bad.
The church doesn't know that we've actually survived tearing down a bubble, remodeling,
a flood,
a building collapsing, and COVID-19 apparently. So I mean, it's really been a journey, guys. Just to let you know.
Keeping on, right? So, to when do we know we were called to church planting? So, it started at a missions team meeting we were having here. Jim Joris, our missions team leader, was sharing about and casting vision for a short-term mission trip that we were going to take to Centerville, Utah, another converged church there called The Bridge. And so it was at that meeting where I started to feel like the Lord was saying something. And it's funny because, like, Victoria and Joshua know that I can be pretty competitive, but I'm not like stupid competitive. Like, I know when I'm going to lose, so I'll just kind of back off a little bit. Like, oh, I'm not really trying. So I'm not this kind of competitive that I'm going to describe to you in a second here, because I remember Jim saying that because of the spiritual landscape of Utah, the average church planter goes about 12 to 18 months before they burn out. And it was right upon hearing that I felt like the Lord was saying, you're going to go and do that, and I'm going to be with you. And I said, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to stay right here, and you're going to be with me here. But he has a way of making these things work out and working through our doubts and our fears to really confirm what he's saying. And so it was a couple of months later, Joshua walked into my office And there was a Converge church planting assessment center coming up, and Victoria and I were scheduled to go and observe and just kind of watch the process. Really, before this couple of months that I'm telling you about, church planting was not on our radar. And so Joshua walks into my office and he says, hey, they messed something up. You were supposed to be observers. They put you down as candidates. I'll make sure they fix it, and we'll be fine. You just come watch. And I was like, well, let's talk about this a minute. And so I actually ended up, explaining to Joshua what I felt like the Lord was doing. And so we agreed, okay, so we're going to go and do an assessment. And so we find ourselves a couple of weeks later. That evening I went home, and it was the first time I told Victoria anything about church planting. And not only was like, hey, I think God is calling us to do this. And by the way, in 2 weeks, we're going to go through this grueling 4-day assessment process, and they're going to tell us whether we're cut out for this or not. So we walked into the assessment with, there were 9 other couples. And most of them were like years into their church planting journey, or at least planning for it. And here we are like 2 weeks in. Like we didn't know which end was up. And we walked out of that assessment with, we drove in the last morning, and we're getting out of the car, like, this is it. Like, this is the end of the road. It's going to be a solid red light. We're off the hook. No big deal. Like, no harm, no foul. And we walk out that early that afternoon with like a full green light recommendation. Like, we want you to be the point couple in a church plant. And so we're like, well, I guess we got to trust these people. They're all experienced planters. They're, kind of like, I guess, ministry experts, if you can call them that. And they saw something in us that at the time we weren't even seeing in ourselves. And so the short answer to your question is we sought wise counsel, and they evaluated us and put us through the ringer for 4 days and said, yeah, you should do this.
Yeah, that's about how it went. I was there, and I joked with the first group that Dave and Victoria paid all the assessors $20 to pass them. They did not do that. They just bought us all coffee. And so
that joke totally, Victoria's true, right? We don't have that kind of money, but that joke totally went over my head first service. I thought you were saying that Converge paid all the assessors like $20 for lunch. That's why I didn't laugh.
No, they didn't even buy us lunch. It's okay. It's all good. So it's kind of one of those things, right? Where if you're trying to figure out, is God leading me somewhere? If you doubt, or if you're trying to get out of it, it's probably an indication that God is actually calling you someplace. So oftentimes the things that God wants us to do, we actually don't want to do. And it's because of his faithful persistence that eventually we're like, okay, that's what you want to do. So if you're trying to figure out what God's doing, if you're trying to get out of it, or you just are kind of ignoring it for a little while, you might want to pay attention in that space, all right? So we've all kind of...
It's the thing you don't want to do that makes your heart beat a little faster that you know you have to do.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
There you go. That's true. So, so what scriptures, promises has God revealed to you guys along the way? Because a lot of times when God calls you to something, he will give you promises, or he'll give you scriptures to kind of lean on and encourage you along the way.
Yeah. So one of the things that we've both held on to in this process, I think, since April of when did last time we go to Utah? I don't know. April of some year.
Was it 18?
I don't know. Anyway, we went to Utah for our first vision trip, the first time we had set foot in the state with intentions of, is this where we're called, kind of thing. We went to a summit that's put on by a nonprofit called Loving Utah, and they help church planners for evangelical churches in the state. And one of the things that somebody there encouraged everyone to do was to set a reminder at 9:37 a.m. to pray Matthew 9:37-38, which in a nutshell is that the harvest is plentiful and the workers are few. And just to pray that the Lord would continue to send people to Utah, that people's hearts like ours would be broken for the people of Utah to go there and be the hands and feet in the area, I guess. So that's one thing that we've both leaned on, just that was super impactful for me to hear, that there are a lot of people associated with this Loving Utah network who are continuously praying that, whether they're in the state or not. And you have a cool story about a guy.
Yeah, so Matthew 9:38 says, "Pray earnestly to the Lord of the harvest to send laborers into the harvest." And when we were at this summit, it was still pretty early morning, and I met this guy named Steve who lives right at the Utah-Idaho border. And he had asked me, what brings you to Utah? Why are you at this conference? What are you doing here? And I told him, hey, you know what? We're dreaming about planting a church here in Utah, and we're just here to see what the Lord does. And this is a conference for church leaders and church planters. And so I kind of assumed he'd just be like, yeah, okay, all right, sounds good, and kind of move on about his day. But as soon as I said we're dreaming about planting a church here and moving here, it was a very different reaction. His eyes actually welled up with tears. And he said, I've been praying that God would send people like you to Utah for 40 years. So you talk about how you know that God is calling you to something. You meet a guy like Steve who just met you, and he weeps in front of you and says, I've been praying for you for 40 years. I don't know if y'all know this. I haven't been alive that long. I mean, it's mind-blowing to see how the Lord has gone so far before us and so far ahead of us and is preparing the land even now. And long before we even knew we were going to end up there, he was doing something there. And so a couple of other, I'll give a couple of quick other verses here. And one is Matthew 22, 34 through 40. And so this N does not stand for knowledge. It doesn't stand for, I don't know what other things we said.
Nebraska City Church.
Nebraska City Church, which Nebraska's a state, by the way. I don't know if you knew that. It stands for neighborhood church. So we're going to be neighborhood church. And so the thing is, you can't plant a church called neighborhood church without God convicting you about who are your neighbors and how to love them better. And so that's what Matthew 22, 34 through 40 is. And then the other one, Joshua loves this one, and I think I picked it up by osmosis, is Joshua 1. And there's a few key things in Joshua 1. And the first is Joshua 1:3. I was putting together like a prayer walk map and guide for this neighborhood that we're going to move into. And I felt like the Lord brought Joshua 1:3 to mind, and it's where he says, I will give you every place where the sole of your foot treads. And I think this is true everywhere, but I think in Utah it's a little bit more acute, where it's a spiritual battle going on, and it actually is territorial. There's some land things going on there. And so for the Lord to say, I'm going to give you every place where your foot treads, is huge. And then, Joshua 1:8 talks about, don't let this book of the law depart from your mouth. Do everything that's written in it, and I will make your way prosperous and successful. And then 1:9 basically says, don't be afraid because I'm with you. And so those were, Joshua 1 has just been lighting us up. I mean, I don't know what else to say about that. That's all I have to say about that.
It's a decent chapter in the Bible, Joshua 1.
It's okay.
It's my favorite book of the Bible, by
It's
the way.
above average, I'll say.
I think everybody should memorize the whole book of Joshua, even though I haven't. Just saying. No, it's good. And, it's awesome that, I think it's important to have promises, because in ministry or even in life in general, like God, there are hard seasons that you really just have to have something to hold on to from the Lord that will give you peace and joy and expectation in the midst of it. And so it's great to be able to share those things. Now, clearly, David likes music. He's leading worship. Today, he'll lead worship next week. So he's technically not leaving today.
Yeah, you can't get rid of me.
So bring tomatoes next week and throw at him. Because
that would bring me a lot of joy.
It would bring me more joy if you did that. But anyway, we all three like music. I know you guys like music, and I think music just is something that says something about our lives. It encourages us or whatever, right? Various songs and all those kind of things. And so one of the questions I thought would be really good for Dave and Victoria to share with you guys is, what songs have you guys been singing during this time? And then why are they significant to not only your call, but also to your family?
Sure. So the way we planned our answer to this one is I'm going to rattle off a bunch of songs, and then Victoria's going to focus on one. So if you want to look these up, you can go back to the Facebook feed later. I'll just rattle them off. And Victoria also said last service that they're all on a Spotify playlist she has, so you can follow her Spotify. You'll have to talk to her about that because I honestly don't know how to do it. I'm not that cool. But Joel's favorite song is a song called Jailbreak by Vertical Worship. He calls it Jesus is My Liberty because that's one of the lines in the song. Now, if you ever hear a 3-year-old say Jesus is my liberty, it will just melt your heart, but it's awesome. The Rock Won't Move is also by Vertical Worship. Egypt by Corey Asbury, we sang this morning. Graves into Gardens by Elevation. There's a whole bunch of others. The thing is, I think all of us, when we sing worship songs, we each have our own thing going on in our life. The songs speak to each one of us in a different way, in a unique way. And so all of these songs have spoken to us personally, but also about church planting. And a lot of it is actually a similar message. And these are all they're resurrection songs. They're songs about being brought from death to life. They're songs about being brought from who you used to be to your new identity, from being enslaved to now being free. And so I think we can all relate to those songs. And when God is leading you to do something like plant a church or reach lost people in any specific way, whatever that might be for you, these songs really take on a new meaning to where you're not just singing it as worship and singing it over yourself, you're singing it over other people. And we're singing these songs over people we haven't even met yet because of what we believe the Lord's going to do. So. Yeah.
I was going to say something about Spotify, but I don't remember what it is. Anyway. If you want these songs to listen to on Spotify, they're in a playlist called Daybreak, which is the name of the neighborhood that we're moving to. Anyway, so the song that I was going to talk about is Waymaker by Leland. Last September, we were gifted Worship on the Rocks tickets to go to the big concert series at Red Rocks, which is really cool. If you ever have the opportunity to get tickets, go. But this year at the show, Leland was there, and he sang Waymaker, and it was the first time I'd ever heard it, and he repeated the chorus for a really long time, longer than normal or longer that's on the recorded version. And there was a point in time where we're sitting there, standing there, we're at Red Rocks, right? We're looking over Denver, the sun's going down, and the Lord just flooded my mind with all the ways that these attributes have shown up in our life and are true about what our church planting journey has looked like and will look like. And so the chorus says that he is a waymaker, miracle worker, promise keeper, and light in the darkness. And each of those 4 attributes at this point has some kind of meaning to us. But in general, the idea for Waymaker is just that the Lord will make a way for us to get to Utah. I had a lot of anxiety over moving again, selling a house, packing all the stuff, all the things. This is my over 20th move personally, and our 8th or 9th move in 8 years of marriage. So it's really not my favorite thing. But that the Lord will make a way for us to get there, and that he will make a way for us in Daybreak, which is our neighborhood. It's pretty tight-knit, and so just holding on to that promise that the Lord has a way and a place for us there. Miracle worker, we're believing and praying over people already, like David said, that we don't know that the Lord would change hearts for him. And someone I was talking to was that seems like a not as big of a miracle. That's not what I think of when I think of miracle. And I'm well, if you know the vast spiritual landscape of Utah is LDS Mormon, that's a miracle. And promise keeper, that the Lord will hold fast to his promise for us, that he goes before us and that he will be with us, which just relates back to what David heard the Lord telling him long before I even knew this was a thing, that he would be with us through church planting, and light in the darkness, that he would be the one true light in the darkness that is Utah. We've both separately had a vision of the sun coming up over the Utah Valley and illuminating all of the darkness, which is how... So at the church plan assessment, we had to come up with a theoretical church in 2 weeks, and we named said church Daybreak because of this vision that we have. And it turns out Daybreak is a master plan community in South Jordan. We didn't know that. Now we do, and now we're moving to Daybreak. So that's kind of cool. And then if you guys were listening to the sermon last week, Joshua talked about how when you start noticing that the Lord works in patterns, you start to realize that, like, the next step, you can kind of see those patterns coming back up. And so then I was thinking about that, and these 4 attributes have also rang true for us moving here, which is a whole nother story, but not a normal process of why people probably leave a job and move to Colorado. And then also, just through having children, we've struggled with that for a long time. We have one great kiddo who's running around somewhere back there. But just that the Lord has held true to these 4 attributes for longer than I realized at the time. So it's been pretty significant.
That's great. That's good. Well, thank you guys for sharing, being vulnerable. So let's go to Neighborhood Church a little bit, and let's talk about kind of why the name Neighborhood Church. So I'll give you 3 questions in one. Share a bit of the vision of Neighborhood Church, and then kind of what challenges do you guys foresee, and then talk to us about how, like, if we want to pray or if we want to give money to Neighborhood Church, how that can happen as well. So 4 questions, go.
Deal. All right, so we'll start with the name Neighborhood Church. And actually, before that, I want to tell you about this logo, because you may not see it. I didn't at first, but once you see it, you can't unsee it. That's a house. There's a chimney in the roof line and the window in the middle. It's a house. And so we have this idea of a home, a refuge for the lost, a refuge for people who are trying to measure up and who are just need a safe place to process spirituality and what that means. And so the name Neighborhood, Victoria mentioned how our hypothetical church that we came up with in 2 weeks was called Daybreak Church. And so we went and saw Daybreak, the community, and we knew that this was the place the Lord had prepared for us to go. And so we were thinking about, okay, what is it about Daybreak that is drawing us in, and what is it about Daybreak that people love, the residents love? They identify with living in this community. So what is it about Daybreak that is drawing people in? And it's the neighborhood. It's people love living life with their neighbors. They want to be around each other. There's tons of community events, and there's community pools and water courses and all kinds of things where people can be in each other's company. And so it's the neighborhood. And then the other thing is, we often think about neighborhood as a place. It's the place we live, and that's not wrong, but it's something else too. It's this idea of neighborhood. You think about parenthood or childhood, it's something that you're immersed in, that you do day in and day out. And so our church is about living out our neighborhood, to put it a fancy way, our state of being neighbors with those around us. That's what we're all about. And so our mission statement, really simple, is to lead our neighbors to life-changing relationships with Jesus. There's tons of transition in the Salt Lake Valley, especially right where we're going to be. We're in the newest village of Daybreak, which is just blowing up with homes. There's tons of tech jobs and companies moving in. So there's tons of transition, and our hope is that we can help people in their time of transition when they're looking for a new normal, when they're more open to spiritual conversations and things like that. Our hope is that we can help them build a new normal that includes a relationship with Jesus. And it is life-changing. It doesn't keep anything the same. You can't stay the same when you're following Jesus. So that's a little bit about mission and vision. The last little quick bit that I'll say is we want to be a place where we're helping people understand who they are in light of who God is. So in a church plant, you can't really use churchy words, and so we'll talk about self-identity and self-discovery. But God's handiwork will all be infused into those conversations. Because there's a lot of people trying to measure up, trying to put on, a happy face and a brave face, but there's also a lot of brokenness and hurt. And so we want people to understand who they are in light of who God is. And I'll let Victoria talk about the challenges.
So one of the things that I feel like is kind of an obvious challenge for the area is just the spiritual landscape of Utah. It's heavily LDS. We totally recognize that. Fun fact, South Jordan, which is the city we're moving to, is the first city in the world to have 2 LDS temples, which is a big deal. If you want to know the difference between temples and chapels and all those things, you can come talk to us. But one of those temples in South Jordan is within Daybreak's community limits. It's actually kind of in the center now because of how development has spread. And we're only 25 minutes south of Salt Lake City, which is where like the big temple that everyone pictures is. So 25 minutes from there, we've got 2 temples just within our city. The other thing is that there is a big need for people to feel like they need to measure up in the area. And so we recognize that breaking down those exteriors and kind of getting past people's exterior wall is going to be a bit of a challenge. And so our prayer is just that we would have the diligence might not be the right word. I don't know, the patience and the drive, I guess, to keep at it when people are hesitant to share things until that relationship is good and solid and they feel comfortable to share those things with us. And like David had mentioned, that we would just be a refuge for people to ask spiritual questions, life questions, whatever it may be, and that we would be a safe place for that. Daybreak is also a very, very close-knit community, and we are very much coming in as outsiders. But we feel a little bit like we found a slight loophole in that. And like David mentioned, the village that we're moving into within Daybreak is extremely new. It's one of the newest ones that they've opened up lots for. And everyone around us will have also just built a house or just moved into a brand new house. And so everyone's in the same transitional stage that we're in. Everyone's just now moving in or just now getting it all figured out. And so we have some fun, goofy ways that we plan to interact with people through that. But just knowing that other parts of Daybreak...
Balloons will be involved.
Other parts of Daybreak are kind of hard to break into. And so that's another thing we know we're going to have to face up, I guess.
Can never go wrong with balloons. I still like balloons and fireworks.
It's a Bob Goff thing.
Oh, yes, Bob Goff. Y'all know Bob Goff?
He wrote the book called Love Does.
Yep.
And what's the other one?
Everybody Always. And he's got a new book called Dream Big.
Oh, I thought it'd be called Balloons, but that's fine.
You're welcome for the plug, Bob, if you're watching.
I actually emailed Bob Goff.
Did you email back?
He did.
Oh, wow.
He emailed me back. So if you're listening, what's up?
That's awesome.
Because I had a dream that he joined our support team. And it was
that'd be
big
good.
deal.
That would be a good support team. Just him. All right, so we're going to move to marriage, and I'm just going to ask you guys kind of one question about kind of looking off into the future. We're hearing, the faithfulness of God, some promises, mission, vision. Neighborhood church.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
If you wanted to support us financially, there's just no way around this. It takes money to do this and to start a church. Or be on our prayer team. We send out monthly prayer updates the first week of every month, so there's one going out tomorrow or Tuesday. You can do all of that on our website, hendersonsforutah.com. We are not currently running for governor. If that happens, we will keep the domain. But
Hendersons for America.
You never know.
all of that info is on our homepage. There's also a giving tab on that website where it'll take you to Converge's page to give to the church plant, and a little like fill-in form thing to join our prayer team. If you just want to get in touch with us, I mean, by all means, if you have our numbers, call us, text us, whatever. But you can also, what did you say?
At 2 a.m, please.
Okay.
My phone's on Do Not Disturb from 10 to 6, so go ahead, 2 a.m. is good.
You can also email us at hendersons.utah@gmail.com. That's where we're trying to funnel kind of our church planting stuff so that it is all in one place.
Awesome.
We'll be right down here. If you're watching online from home, feel free to email us. If you're here in person, we'll be right down here in front of the stage after service. We'd love to talk to you if you have any questions.
All right. So from a marriage perspective, so looking futuristically here, what hopes do you have about the new season of life for you guys' family?
You want to take this? You want me to?
I feel like I've been talking a lot.
Okay. You haven't, but I'll take it. I will gladly take it. So, one of the hopes for our family is just real simply that God would grow it. We know a lot of you have been praying with us and for us for several years that, through infertility and whatever else, that God would grow our family. And so we're so grateful and so thankful for those prayers. And we wanted to show you a picture here that we brought with us today. Check out that t-shirt. So God, He answers prayers. He's faithful. And so,
Can I say one more thing real quick before you do your, whatever you called it?
Yeah.
So I didn't say this during first service. There's a couple of people here who I feel like need to hear this. There's a handful of people who know this, literally like less than 5, who have comforted and prayed for us through some times of pregnancy loss. And I just wanted to say thank you. Y'all have been super sweet for that. And there's just not a lot of people that we told because it's hard. But thank you just for being as close as family when family's not close.
Yeah, thank you. This is where I get to use my infomercial voice and say, but wait, there's more. And it's not twins, but there's a video.
If it's pink,
the
it's
baby is a...
Girl, okay, you gotta look at me. Push it down like this.
Here, see this part? Aim that part of
1,
mommy or daddy.
2, 3. Come here. What does pink mean? Pink means?
If the baby is a...
Girl, you're getting a sister!
We already covered it.
Yeah. You're about to be broke, David.
Yep.
All she has to do is be like, Daddy, here's the card.
I'm not going to carry a wallet anymore. She'll have it.
You shouldn't.
Yeah, so baby girl due first week of February. So
Praise God. That's awesome, right? All right, David.
Wait,
oh,
sorry.
Okay. Yes.
Can I say one more thing since this is second service?
Nope. Yes, you can.
So we know a lot of you have been praying with us through this too. There's a whole lot of people praying for us about all of this. We actually have some sweet friends in Utah who have been praying with us as well. And the last time we were there, they asked us just like for an update, how are things going or whatever. And they were putting their daughters to bed that night. They have 3. And they were praying with their girls. And Mina, the oldest, was like, Mommy, we have to pray that they have more babies. Cue tears. But anyway, so Nate and Robin are praying with their girls, and they actually prayed that we would have what they dubbed a Utah baby. And I remember being very angry because I wanted a baby before that. So when we called them to tell them that we were pregnant, it was just kind of sweet and funny that like, well, now we're having a Utah baby. And I was telling this story to somebody else, and she was telling me, she was like, I know, like when you pray super specific, God answers very specifically. And I was like, oh my God, yes, he does.
That's awesome. Yep. Colorado baby, Utah baby. That's awesome. All right, David. So David's been our executive pastor for 2 years. He's been on staff for 3. And so we were talking, and he's like, hey, he was like, hey, I'd love to do a parting message for CHBC. So David, what message would you want to leave the church with?
Yeah, so there's, based on something that came up first service, there's 2 now. So
oh, yes.
You're going to get 2 quick ones. So the first one is that I know that there's a lot of pastor transitions all at once at Crow Hill. And it might feel like your pastoral staff is moving away. And I just want to remind you that that's not the case. We're not moving away, we're moving forward. And Crow Hill will always have a special place in our hearts. But God has made it clear the time has come for us to move forward with the calls that he's placed on each one of our lives. So we're not moving away, we're moving forward. And in the same way, God is calling Crow Hill Bible Church to continue to follow him and move forward. That's what we've been talking about the last couple of weeks here. And, Joshua mentioned this last week, that back in October, when we still thought I was going to be around till June of next year, and we had no idea that there would be any other staff or pastoral transitions at Crow Hill, it was at that time that God put it on our hearts to talk about a series on transitions, and to do this series that we've been in since April, end of April or maybe beginning of May, but called Rewritten. So it's God who's orchestrating these transitions. It's God who is building his church and moving his church forward, and all we can do is follow him forward. So we're not moving away, we're moving forward, and we love y'all, and we miss you. We'll miss you. We don't miss you yet. We will. We're not gone yet, though. And so the other thing, this was something that came up earlier when Victoria was talking more about our transition from Dallas to Bailey, and how we kind of just thought it was this normal thing, like we feel like God's saying we should do this, and so we're going to go and do it. But there were people in Dallas who just thought we were nuts. For like, wait, you're not moving for a job. Like, yeah, you worked out a job transfer, but like, you're not moving for a job. You're just moving because you feel like God said to. And we're like, yeah, pretty normal, right? But here's the thing that struck me when she was kind of sharing that story earlier, is that when you're following Jesus, normal is crazy and crazy is normal. You can't stay the same. Normal is crazy because he calls us to so much more than normal. And crazy becomes normal because what he does call us to is the big, life-changing, earth-shattering, world-changing things. So when we're following Jesus, normal is crazy and crazy is normal. And that's all we're doing. We're just following Jesus.
Just being crazy.
And it's crazy and it's messy and it can be frustrating and it hurts sometimes, and it's the best thing ever.
Yeah. Amen. That's good. 2 good words, bro. Good words. Well, hey, on behalf of the church, we have something for you. We've already given you something, David, but this is more for Victoria than for you, just because she needs to use that and make those decisions. Trust me.
We haven't opened it yet, and you're making me nervous. So.
Yeah, it's for Victoria. It's not you. It's okay.
Fair enough.
But we love you guys. Thank you for sharing your story.
Yeah. Well, hey, here's one other thing. Now, you got your T-shirt last service.
I did.
You did. You got your neighborhood church T-shirt. So now, Victoria wants to do it.
Okay.
This is for Sarah. You can come up if you would like. You got to do the shake thing. Make it snap. She didn't do it. It is.
That's awesome.
That was a whole lot of things going on. Yeah.
Thank y'all so much. That's
Thank you.
awesome.